All right, welcome back. This is presentation 4 of chapter 15, Foreign Policy, and this is the last presentation we're going to be doing. And we're looking at sort of the challenges, basically what foreign policy actually looks like. So let's go ahead and jump in. One important aspect of foreign policy is this notion of soft power, and this is a term coined by Joseph Nye, who's a foreign policy scholar, I believe at Harvard, basically saying that soft power is the attractiveness of a nation's culture and way of life that has the effect of causing people to want to follow those nations. And so soft power can come from giving of aid, cultural diplomacy, student exchange programs, other kinds of mechanisms that are designed to, calculate it, if you will, to improve a nation's image. Historically, Hollywood is a source of soft power. Historically, the U.S. cultural dominance from movies, music, and culture gave it a unique soft power advantage. These days, other countries, I think India is a good example with its Bollywood is coming to rival in some ways America's soft power, and they're in many ways emulating or attempting to emulate the advantage that the United States had for much of the 20th century. Arbitration, that refers to the use of a neutral third party for resolving an international disagreement. Arbitration is sometimes viewed as the manifestation of soft power, and the United States occasionally turns to international tribunals to resolve conflicts with other countries. The United States relies heavily on the work of arbitrarial panels to maintain the flow of international trade, on which the U.S. economy is increasingly dependent. International trade is reliant on the consistent enforcement of contracts and aggressive protection of the rights of U.S. businesses by the U.S. government in international arbitration panels is an important basis for the needed certainty that those kinds of contractual arrangements be upheld. So who participates? This is one of these slides that talks about, again, sort of getting inside of American foreign policy. Who serves in the military? And here, I think when you look at gender, close to 85% of military personnel, uniformed military personnel, are men. That creates, again, another problem that, that women are sufficiently underrepresented, that oftentimes when they are in the military, they are subject to abuse. Race, the U.S. population is 72% white. It's 70% of the military. Blacks are 20%. Asians and others are about 10%. Ethnicity, 20% of Latinos, or 20% of the military are Latinos. By geographic origin, the South is slightly overrepresented. The Midwest and the Northeast are slightly underrepresented. The Mountain West is about normal, right? Again, this is sort of a closer look at this sort of the challenge of understanding the distribution of folks. I think a socioeconomic slide would be very interesting here, because again, a lot of people that go into the military are relatively low income. They're doing it for economic opportunities, and that has a consequence. That has an impact on how these folks behave in the military. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I am saying, again, that there are consequences that flow from that the officer corps is predominantly coming from higher income brackets, and the enlisted folks are coming from relatively lower income brackets. This was a problem that we saw during Vietnam that we ended up addressing by bringing more people of color into the officer corps aggressively through a recruitment process. Again, that's a closer look. Again, looking at there's a 6-point swing for Southerners. Again, that reflects the fact that the South has historically been Southern political culture has been a bit more martially oriented towards military service. The others are, again, only slightly over or underrepresented. I think you would say the Northeast at 5 points is significant. So that's something to consider. The United States faces daunting foreign policy challenges. The U.S. has complex relations with China, Russia, with Iran and North Korea. You also are going to talk about, we're going to talk a little bit about international trade policy and global environmental policy that again presents significant challenges to United States leadership. China is very powerful. It's got one of the most powerful economies in the world. It's got the largest economy in the world. It's certainly not the wealthiest, but it is the largest kind of country with an internal marketplace. So China represents both an economic and military challenge in the long term and potentially in the short term, because under Xi Jinping, China has been acting a lot more aggressively in the South China Sea. Russia and its territorial aspirations and willingness to intrude into U.S. domestic politics presents a much more immediate challenge, particularly since its invasion of Ukraine and its clear intention to recreate the former Soviet Union. The United States has sought collective action with European allies to counter Russian aggression, largely successfully, until about 6 months ago when Republicans refused to extend military aid to Ukraine, which I think was very short-sighted. Both China and Russia have made extensive use of electronic hacking to break into computer systems in the United States, of both government and businesses. And again, that represents a serious challenge that has to be addressed and countered. Nuclear proliferation in Iran and North Korea are serious issues. Iran and the United States have had adversarial relations since the 1979 Iranian Revolution. It's important to keep in mind that prior to 1979, Iran was a close U.S. ally in the Middle East and a sort of a guarantor of U.S. interests under the Shah of Iran. The United States has employed a mix of carrots and sticks of military aid and also sanctions to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. The Obama administration, negotiated the Iran nuclear deal in 2015, which involved lifting what were very effective economic sanctions against Iran in exchange for Iran's agreement not to develop nuclear weapons and to agree to weapons inspections. In North Korea, the Juche regime of Kim Jong-un again represents serious regional challenges to U.S. Eastern Asian countries and our other allies, particularly Japan and South Korea. Trade policy: the United States consistently imports more than it exports. That produces a trade deficit with the rest of the world. That is not sustainable forever. That is something that we are going to have to address at some point. It will involve some sacrifices. Neither political party is prepared to make those sacrifices now. The United States has accused China and other nations of unfair trade practices that limit the sale of goods imported into their markets. Japan is, infamous on that score. But again, Japan is a much smaller nation and consequently justifies its more serious, more aggressive controls over imported goods. Donald Trump's 2016 campaign emphasized the unfair trade deals of previous administrations, and as president, he sought to renegotiate many of those existing deals with quite mixed success. Again, a lot of it was more public relations than anything really significant in terms of resolving issues. Global environmental policy. Environmental issues present unique collective action challenges. These are oftentimes what we call intermestic issues, where there are issues that affect other nations, but they also affect the domestic politics of a country. Generally, the United States is supportive of various international efforts to protect the environment. But other nations have, again, criticized the U.S. for withdrawing from the 1997 Kyoto Protocol and further criticized the Trump administration's withdrawal from the Paris Agreement to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And what we've really seen is sort of this toggling schizophrenic deal where Democrats agree with international environmental changes to try and preserve the environment, and Republicans basically nix those kinds of agreements. So again, we're sort of just toggling back and forth on those issues. So foreign policy, what do you think? America's history and ideals hold that the United States foreign policy should have a higher purpose than the mere pursuit of self-interest, and that the United States should use force only as a last resort. In what ways do American responses to various security, trade, and humanitarian challenges reflect those historic ideals, and in what ways do they sometimes clash? What do you think about the Americans who were affected by Donald Trump's travel ban? What do you think they would say? Greater trade reduces the price of many products for Americans and for international consumers. At the same time, globalization also creates economic winners and losers. What can the United States do in the future to make sure that globalization is more positive than negative and that promotes U.S. security and prosperity? Under what conditions do you think it's appropriate for the United States to use military force? Under what conditions do you think diplomacy is the more appropriate approach? There are so many issues right now that are happening in international affairs that, that kind of question is increasingly becoming relevant. When should we help Ukraine? How much? If Russia does succeed in taking Ukraine, should we help Moldova? Should we stand with the Baltic states, who are our NATO allies, in the event that Russia can again, cast their gaze towards those countries? These are the issues that you have to think critically about, and think carefully about what when should the United States use force. So that's it for this chapter and for this semester. I hope you've learned a lot. And again, I hope you carry these lessons forward as you go forward in life. I will see you around.